Show, and we're exploring how those reservations are affecting real women on the ground and why it's time to reclaim these rights as non-negotiable. We're speaking to the Program Officer of Legal Equality at Equality Now, Gicuku Karugu, who's joining us to speak about the Maputo Protocol and why it should be non-negotiable. Thank you so much, Gicuku, for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's speak about what the Maputo Protocol is, first of all. And I'm sure even though this is in the advancement of women's rights, many women across the continent are only hearing about the Maputo Protocol for the first time.
Yes, so the Maputo Protocol, as you mentioned, is a protocol to the African Charter on the rights, on human and people's rights, on the rights of women. And it was adopted in 2003. And it is a unique document because it is by Africans, for Africans, seeking to protect and promote the rights of women and girls in the African continent. And what's really unique about the document, unlike other UN, for example, UN documents like the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women, is that it does speak to the unique cultural and religious experiences of women in the continent. For example, the Maputo Protocol seeks to protect women from harmful cultural practices. For example, like the practice of female genital mutilation, which is recognized as a harmful practice, the practice of forced and early child marriages. And interestingly, the Maputo Protocol also requires or allows for women to enjoy what is called a positive cultural context, meaning that it acknowledges that we as Africans have unique cultures, cultural practices, but within, our enjoying those cultural and traditional practices, women should also be allowed to have a positive and safe experience in enjoying those cultural and traditional and religious practices. Beyond that, the Maputo Protocol also protects the rights of women and promotes the rights of women, for example, older women, women in conflict settings, also providing for women within those settings to be part of peace processes, the rights of women when it comes to inheritance, within marriage, in divorce and separation processes, and also protecting women from discrimination, both in the work setting, but also within educational settings.
Well, this protocol has worked really hard to advance the rights of women and girls across the continent in the past 22 years. Let's speak about these 22 years. In what ways has the lives of women and girls improved through the Maputo Protocol?
Thank you. So, yes, the Maputo Protocol, like I said, has provided for a lot of protections for women and girls around the continent. And for the countries that have ratified the Maputo Protocol, and we have 45 ratifications so far, 10 countries are yet to ratify the protocol. It has meant that member states, country states, have put in place laws, policies, and mechanisms for the promotion and protection of women within their countries. I can speak to my country, Kenya. The ratification of the Maputo Protocol meant that we now have very extensive laws protecting our rights. We have a Sexual Offences Act, which speaks on the different types of forms of sexual violence against women and the protections that are afforded to women under those provisions. We have an Anti-FGM Act, which is also seeks to protect women and girls from female genital mutilation. And then these are not laws that are particularly unique to Kenya. We have similar laws in other jurisdictions. Also, we have, several constitutions that also speak to equality and non-discrimination of women in those particular countries. And so the Maputo Protocol has really advanced the rights of women and girls within the continent, ensuring that even within, like I said, our cultural and traditional context, there are protections within our constitutions, but also within legislation and policies in the various countries that have ratified the protocol.
Now, this Maputo Protocol is a legally binding document to countries who have ratified the protocol. However, there are many instances where countries and states choose not to be bound by specific provisions of the treaty, and these are called reservations. Let's speak a little bit about what these reservations are.
Sure. So a reservation is known, if I'm going to speak on its definition, it is basically a unilateral statement which seeks to limit the legal a country's legal responsibilities to implementing a particular provision. And what I mean by that is, if a state has a reservation on a particular provision, it means that it is not legally bound to do anything to ensure that that provision is applied within its country. And so currently we have 9 countries that have reservations to the Maputo Protocol. And these are Algeria, Cameroon, Ethiopia, Kenya, Mauritius, Namibia, the Sahrawi Arabic Democratic Republic, and South Africa. And so these reservations basically limit the legal application of those provisions. And for example, in Uganda, they have a reservation on Article 14 of the Maputo Protocol, which speaks to reproductive health rights, or reproductive health and reproductive rights. And specifically, we can look at Article 14.2c.
Okay, Gicuku, I'm sorry to cut you there. I need to go on a quick break. And I actually want us to actually start over and speak about the reservations that exist in these different countries, what exactly they are, and how they limit the rights of women within those particular states that have reservations on the Maputo Protocol. We'll continue speaking to Gicuku Karugu after this break to continue unpacking the Maputo Protocol, the countries that have reservations, and the advancements of women's rights on the continent.
Stella Longwe pamalonje
palitu sokoma pano pamalonje kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa kusangalala kupeza moyo akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino pano pamalonje ndiyetu apa tili ndikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi. Yatusani kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwinobwino kwambiri. Chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwinobwino.
Ayi aziwoneka chiliyonse chikutheka mofa maglasi anu apa mwaka. Akuti kumenya yonse aziwoneka zoti azikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
malonje pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa Tau
On the move.
It's 22 minutes past 9 o'clock Central African time. This is a very serious conversation we're having today, an important one because there are many legal instruments, legal tools that we have here continentally in Africa that are aimed to actually look at human rights and also how we're delivering to the ordinary African. But the big issue is that we don't know much about them and how they affect us. Today we're looking at the Maputo Protocol, and it is a very powerful instrument. However, it's almost like what we call the peer review mechanism, which is an African instrument that has been introduced by the African Union member states, which is also kind of fostering the same concept. What these tools are supposed to do is to make sure that our human rights are taken care of, that we see transparent governance on the ground. And we're looking at this from a woman's perspective, this Maputo Protocol, which is a groundbreaking African women's rights treaty, which marks its 22nd anniversary. That's why we're speaking about it. There's a huge response from Equality Now, and it speaks about that it actually should be a non-negotiable, and it argues that a lot of these reservations, but also issues around women's human rights in the Maputo Protocol are not really adhered to, and therefore we are failing many families and many women. Joining us from Equality Now, we're joined by Gicuku Karugu, who is a program officer of legal equality at Equality Now. Let's expand on that particular point that you were trying to explain on the reservations of the Maputo Protocol to reflect the broader and political and cultural barriers. Can you elaborate on that, because we had to go to a break?
Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Palesa. So, as I was saying, a major issue when it comes to reservations is one, usually reservations are a clear indicator of a lack of political will to protect women under a particular provision, but also as a whole. And the reason why I say this is when we speak of human rights, we say that they are indivisible and interdependent. Indivisible meaning none is above the other, and interdependent is they are all connected. So where we are limiting one right, we are limiting another right. And so, for example, if we're saying that, like in certain jurisdictions, they have reservations on the age of marriage, and they don't want to restrict the age of marriage to 18. So if we're saying that we are going to limit the age of marriage, then what does that say about the right to education? If we're saying a girl as young as 12 can be married off, then that would also affect her right to education. It would affect her future right to work. It also exposes her to violence, and discrimination within the household, outside of the household. And so we're saying that a reservation restricts more than just the provision, the rights within the provision that they apply to. They restrict and affect all of those rights. So we've talked about like the political will, but then also when it comes to the cultural barriers, we have some reservations that are very explicitly based on religious or cultural beliefs. So, for example, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic has specifically stated that its reservations are based on the fact that the articles that it is reserving contravene Islamic law. And so we have a very express and clear example of where religious barriers are also affecting the rights of women. And so this is very concerning because reservations mean, or we said they limit the legal application of those rights within the country, meaning that the countries will not put in place the proper policies, mechanisms, legislations to protect women and girls from discrimination. I said, that has far-reaching and very wide impacts on their rights in general.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you highlight that, because, many of us don't know around these legal instruments that are very continental and agreed to in a higher level in our government structures. I mean, when you think of something that I've cited as well, the peer review mechanism is something that many Africans don't even know how to hold their governments accountable to. I think it's the same with the Maputo Protocol. How do we actually hold our governments accountable to these protocols? What do we do as ordinary citizens to make sure that these are adhered to?
Thank you. So, firstly, we would have to talk about public education and awareness. I think that's like the first step when it comes to holding your country accountable. So ensuring that not only do the general public, our communities know what the Maputo Protocol is, what their rights are, but also within government offices and structures, there is a lack of an understanding on the Maputo Protocol, what it says, and the country's obligations within the protocol. So ensuring that they are aware of that even within our judicial systems. We do a lot of advocacy work. I know there are a lot of organizations, even within South Africa, that do advocacy work. So, calling out governments where they see that there's been a violation. Also, providing member states with technical support where there might be gaps in their knowledge and understanding of, how to properly implement these rights, being there as civil society organizations to support. But then for individuals, you could always start with your local or the courts within your local jurisdictions, where there is a violation by your government, by individuals of human rights, taking them to local courts and following the local court system until its end. So that might be the Supreme Court. And if you're still dissatisfied with the decision of the local courts and tribunals, then there is the option to go to the AU reporting mechanisms.
Okay.
So, for example, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights does listen to matters of human rights violations, and individuals and civil society are allowed to take complaints to these mechanisms.
Yeah, we've run out of time. Thank you so much, Gicuku, for joining us here on our show and helping us on this one, because we need to understand these large-scale issues from an individual perspective, from a citizenship viewpoint. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
That Gicuku Karugu, who's